Have you ever looked at your bank account and wondered how everything got so expensive, even though you're working just as hard or maybe even harder than before? Groceries cost more, rent keeps rising, gas, utilities, insurance. It feels like every single bill has gone up at the same time. And what makes this even more concerning is that this isn't just happening in one city or one state. It's happening across the entire United States and Canada. Today, we're breaking down why the cost of living crisis is hitting so many people, how it looks different in the US and Canada, and how millions of families are being forced to adapt just to keep up. When people hear the phrase cost of living crisis, it can sound like some distant, complicated economic buzzword. But in real life, it's actually very simple. It means that the basic necessities of life now consume most of a person's income. We're talking about food, housing, transportation, healthcare, and utilities. These essentials are taking up more and more space in household budgets than ever before. This is a reality in both the US and Canada. First, inflation raised prices incredibly quickly, faster than most of us have seen in our lifetimes. At the same time, wages, for the most part, did not rise at the same pace. Your paycheck might have gone up a little, but prices went up a lot more. To make matters worse, borrowing money became more expensive because of rising interest rates. This made it harder to get a loan for a car or a mortgage, and as a result of all this, saving money became much more difficult, if not impossible, for many. Even people with what we consider good full-time jobs are feeling this financial stress. This crisis isn't about cutting back on luxuries or vacations. For millions, it's about everyday survival. It's about making tough choices between paying the rent and buying enough groceries for the week. One of the first places people notice the pressure is at the grocery store. In both countries, food prices have climbed steadily, and for many families, what used to be a routine trip for groceries has become a genuinely stressful experience. There are several factors driving this surge in prices. Higher fuel and transportation costs mean it costs more to get food from the farm to the store, and that cost is passed on to you. We've also seen disruptions in food production and global supply chains, which means less availability and higher prices. Then there are climate-related impacts on farming, like droughts and floods, which can destroy crops and reduce yields. And on top of all that, we have corporate price increases, where major food companies raise their prices to protect or even boost their profit margins. In the US, you see families switching to store brands, buying less meat, and looking for deals wherever they can. In Canada, the situation is particularly tough, with food costs becoming among the highest relative to income in developed nations. People aren't just cutting back on treats, they're fundamentally changing how they eat. And for some households, even making those changes isn't enough to make ends meet. Now let's talk about housing, because this is where the cost of living crisis truly hits hardest for so many. In the United States, rent has increased dramatically in many cities. It is not uncommon to see rent for a one-bedroom apartment jump by hundreds of dollars in a single year. For those looking to buy, mortgage rates are much higher than they were just a few years ago, which means monthly payments are significantly more expensive. As a result, many first-time buyers are being completely priced out of the market. In Canada, the situation is even more intense. Major cities like Toronto and Vancouver are now some of the least affordable housing markets in the entire world. It's reached a point where even high-earning professionals struggle to afford a home in these areas. So why is housing so incredibly expensive? A big reason is limited housing supply. There simply aren't enough homes being built to keep up with demand. We also have strong population growth, which adds more people looking for a place to live. On top of that, investor ownership plays a role, as corporations and individuals buy up properties, reducing the available stock for regular families. And as we mentioned, rising interest rates make it more costly to borrow money for a mortgage. The result is that many people who fully expected to own a home by now are still renting, or they've had to move back in with family. For younger generations especially, home ownership is starting to feel less like a delay and more like a completely unreachable goal. One of the most frustrating parts of this whole crisis is hearing that wages have increased, and technically, that's true. But the problem is, they haven't increased nearly enough to keep up with the skyrocketing cost of everything else. This growing gap between wages and reality is what's causing so much strain. Across both the US and Canada, any raise an employee gets is often immediately absorbed by a rent hike or higher grocery bills. It feels like taking one step forward and two steps back. For those in entry-level or minimum wage jobs, their income often struggles to cover even the most basic costs of living. This leads to a dangerous cycle where household debt continues to rise as people rely on credit cards or loans just to get by from one month to the next. People are working longer hours, taking on side jobs, and sacrificing their personal time and well-being, yet they're still falling behind financially. This doesn't just create financial stress, it leads to profound emotional exhaustion and burnout. It's a silent struggle affecting millions more people than we often realize. People who look like they are doing just fine on the outside but are struggling to keep their heads above water. So, with all this pressure, how are people coping with this new economic reality? Across North America, lifestyles are changing, and they're changing fast. We're seeing a significant increase in young adults moving back in with their parents, not because they want to, but because they can't afford to live on their own. People are delaying major life milestones, like getting married, having children, or starting a business, because of financial uncertainty. Many are downsizing their homes or relocating to cheaper cities or states, leaving behind communities and support networks. Taking on multiple income streams has become the new normal for many. The side hustle is no longer about extra spending money, it's about paying the electricity bill. And of course, people are cutting non-essential spending entirely. Subscriptions, dining out, hobbies, anything that isn't absolutely necessary is on the chopping block. Some are embracing minimalism as a lifestyle choice, but for many others, it's not a choice at all. They're simply trying to survive from one month to the next. It is crucial to understand that these changes are not the result of poor financial decisions or a lack of effort. They are direct responses to immense and widespread economic pressure. Looking ahead, what does the future hold? Experts don't fully agree on what comes next, which adds to the uncertainty. Some economists believe that inflation will eventually stabilize and cool down, but they also caution that prices are unlikely to return to what they were before. The new, higher prices for goods and services may be here to stay. Others warn that the challenges around housing and affordability, in particular, may continue for years to come. They argue that the fundamental issues, like a lack of housing supply and income inequality, aren't being addressed quickly enough. What is clear, however, is that the economic landscape has fundamentally changed. The old rules don't seem to apply in the same way anymore. In this new environment, financial resilience, adaptability, and informed decision-making are now more important than ever for individuals and families. Learning how to budget effectively, finding ways to increase income, and staying informed about economic trends are no longer just good ideas. They are essential skills for navigating the years ahead. Now, I'd really like to hear from you. How has the cost of living affected your life? Is it getting harder where you live, or are you starting to see things improve? Share your story and your perspective in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation about this. For more content that breaks down the big issues affecting our lives, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share it with your family and friends. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.